This is not the type of fanatic that we are talking about today. Pretty fun, though. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it's going to give you a pretty good overview of what we do here at Horror Movie Syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from the subgenre to explore. And right now we're working on the Horror Movie Supplement, which is an additional 100 subgenres to the original 100 subgenres that we looked at on the Horror Movie Syllabus. But these are a little bit more niche or a little bit more unusual, or sometimes just things that I wanted to talk about on the channel. And that's what we're doing here today as we look at horror movies about fanatics, fanatic horror movies. And admittedly, this is well-worn, well-trod territory because the fanatic horror movies very much overlap with a lot of the other subgenres that we've already covered on the channel, like cults or religion or obsession or even true crime. There's a lot of movies we've already talked about on the channel that would fit really well in this subgenre, but we don't repeat movies on the channel. We don't talk about them if we've already talked about them before. But what I wanted to try to focus on today is fanaticism in the truest definition sense of the word, which is somebody who has an intense devotion to a particular belief or activity or cause, and that's what drives them. Because those types of people, those zealous, devoted people, really can wind up being very dangerous. And I like movies that explore that idea. So that's what I wanted to look at today. But I'll admit, coming up with a fanatic subgenre was really just a way to kind of explore these types of movies. A lot of them tend to be religious fanaticism, for example. But these are things I tend to like a lot. I like a lot of the movies in this kind of area. And so that's why originally we had religion and cults and all these things kind of broken up into separate subgenres. It's because it kind of gave me an opportunity to talk about more movies. And when I made the supplement, I decided to double down on that and give us a little bit more. But I've got some really good ones here for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about like the drive for doing this subgenre as we go on. But it's driven in large part by the movies that we're going to talk about today, because I think we've got some really cool ones, most of which, if not all of which, are a little more under the radar. Again, like a little bit more niche, a little bit more off the beaten path, maybe not quite so mainstream. Hopefully you'll find some gems that you didn't know about today. So we're going to go ahead and rank them like we always do, undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level. And I think in this case, I'm going to rank them in order of how disturbing I think they are. Like they get more and more disturbing as we go on. So buckle up for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. But hopefully you're a fan of the channel, because we're about to get into some fanatic horror movies. The first movie that we're looking at today, the undergraduate level selection, is The Believers. The Believers came out in 1987 and was directed by John Schlesinger, who is known for a lot of really good movies, probably the most noteworthy one being Midnight Cowboy, for which he won the Academy Award. And the movie is also written by Mark Frost, who is the other guy responsible for creating Twin Peaks along with David Lynch. And the movie is based on a 1982 novel by Nicholas Conde, also known as Robert Nathan, called The Religion. So there's some pedigree already behind the camera on this movie, and that lends itself to something that's a little bit special in my opinion, but we're going to get into that in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie's about a psychiatrist whose wife passes away, so he moves himself and his young son to the city and becomes a police psychiatrist, helping to investigate a series of very strange murders that are permeating the city that seem to have some sort of occult or ritualistic background. And of course, he winds up figuring out all kinds of strange things, and there's all kinds of really horrible stuff that starts happening, and his family's in peril. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there and not spoil the hijinks that abound in this movie. But the movie is a really interesting setup. The idea of these cult murders, ritualistic murders that are going out through the city, and the examination of them from a police psychiatrist is a pretty cool angle. Not necessarily an original one, but a pretty cool one, to say the least. it's a pretty quick hook to get you drawn in pretty quickly. The movie actually starts out pretty dark, and then it kind of goes into this really strange murder mystery type thing. So it's got a really quick hook early on, which is interesting because I feel like this movie is paced a little bit slow, if I'm being honest with you. It kind of feels like it has a little bit of a 70s pace and a 70s vibe to it, even though it's made in the late 80s. And that's, to its benefit and to its detriment, if I'm being honest with you. But you've got a good hook for the story, and you've got a really strong cast. You've got Martin Sheen as your main character, your psychiatrist. You've got Robert Loggia. You've got Jimmy Smits here doing a really great job. He's just unhinged in this movie, but they're all doing really good work here, which is adding to the gravity or the gravitas of the situation. It's really selling it pretty well. But what I like the most about this movie is the exploration into these religious cults, if you will, these mysterious rituals. It's talking about Santeria and it's talking about Brujeria. It's really distinguishing between the two, as one being more of a good type of magic and one being more of like a dark or evil type of magic. And it's distinguishing between that. It's distinguishing between people who are using these magics for good and benevolent reasons and people who are using them for dark reasons. And the fact that there are two different kinds is a plot point in the movie, and it not only helps to kind of explore the idea of magic and the ways you can use it for good or ill, but also a little bit of a commentary on like racial politics and things like that are a really cool way to kind of explore those topics without being too heavy-handed about it. It's obvious, but I don't think it gets too weighty on it. The movie doesn't get bogged down by that. Now, I will confess the exploration into these magics is not very nuanced. They don't really give a lot of explanation for the details of what's going on. They'll show like the housekeeper putting these little trinkets and stuff around the house that are supposed to ward off evil spirits and stuff like that, but they don't really go too much into the history of it or the mechanics of it or anything like that, which again is kind of fine because that's not what the movie's about. The movie's trying to tell a story. It's a kind of a pot boiler and whatnot, so you don't want to get too bogged down in the details, I suppose. But it would be kind of interesting to know that, just because maybe I'm the only one who thinks that way, because I find that to be pretty interesting stuff. But I do like that they at least show it, and that they show kind of the full spectrum of it and how it can be powerful in both good and bad ways. That to me is one of the biggest strengths of the movie. But the other thing I really like about it is the way that fanaticism is drawn into this, because ostensibly you're thinking that the practitioners of these, or the practitioners of these religions, of these magics, are the fanatics. And to some degree that's true, but there is a whole other aspect of fanaticism regarding the wealthy elite in the city. And I don't want to get too deep into it because I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but that's where a whole different kind of fanaticism lies, and what their obsession with and their devotion to is very different than something about simply faith, even if it's an alternative faith. I really like that part of the movie. I like that it's going in a way that admittedly by today's standards might feel a little bit obvious, but it really still resonates, at least for me, as a cool idea, a cool concept, a cool message. And like, look, this movie's got a lot of debt it pays to something like Rosemary's Baby, which, by the way, would fit perfectly into this subgenre, but we've already talked about it before. But it's got a similar vibe, not just in terms of themes and story, but also in terms of vibe. Like, it really kind of has a similar feel to, like I said, it has a feel like, now, Rosemary's Baby came out in 1969, but it really has like this 70s vibe, this movie, which I'm down for. Right? I'm a middle-aged man, so I'm into those kind of movies and that kind of pacing. Younger audiences might find this to be a little bit of a strain, but I'll admit, even I kind of feel like at some points the movie gets a little bit bogged down in the drama of it all. There's a lot of time given and time paid attention to the main character's dead wife and like the psychological ramifications of that, and the drama of him trying to start his life over again and date again, and how that's affecting his kid. There's a lot of time spent on that maybe could be trimmed down a little bit, to be honest with you, and keep the film a little bit more breezy, a little bit more paced wise, paced better. But like, it doesn't bother me that much. I'm kind of used to that kind of thing. Honestly, it's made up for it because there's a lot of creepy supernatural imagery in the movie. There's a lot of really highlighting these strange things that are being done, these practitioners, and just like the magic of it all, and like kind of the gruesome nature of the crimes. The crimes themselves are pretty upsetting and disturbing. It's a dark movie. It's not overly gratuitous in what it's showing, but the topics, the things that are happening in this movie are pretty darn dark. They're really pretty upsetting, and if you're sensitive, maybe they'd be a little disturbing. Things, like dead kids, potential suicide, things like that are kind of heavy topics, and they're not really given a whole lot of gravitas, but they're not played lightly either. They're just kind of there. They're just presented there as if they're normal. Because I think, when the movie came out, it's probably a little bit easier to deal with this than it is today, with people being a little bit more sensitive to these issues. But it is interesting to see this stuff talked about, and especially, again, the magic stuff being explored. Now, one thing I found out in my research to this was that this movie supposedly might be an influence on Adolfo Constanzo and the crimes that he was committing in the rituals that he was doing. Now, we talked about him recently when we looked at the movie Borderland, which we reviewed just a few weeks ago, really. And his stuff is pretty amazing, pretty insane. Look it up if you don't know, but I'm not going to get too sidetracked on it. But I could see how this movie and the ideas that are presented in it could be an influence on him. That would actually make some sense to me. Now, here's the thing. I really like this movie, but I might be kind of in the minority. The reviews on it are kind of mid. They're not horrible. They're not astoundingly great, but this movie does get talked about a lot. If you're looking into like movies that are about fanatics and fanaticism, something like that, this movie does tend to come up. So it's got a bit of a reputation here as something that's noteworthy in this subgenre. So of course I was going to include it because I do like it, and it's got that rep. So I think this one is definitely worth your time. Again, I kind of warn you that it might be a little bit slower paced than you might expect, and it could be a little bit more, could do a little bit more with the subject matter. But for what it's got, I think it delivers. I think it does really well in delivering something that's pretty creepy, pretty dark and taboo and kind of edgy, but also kind of well-rounded and interesting, and has something to say and says it without it being too preachy. So I'm very much in on this one, so I'm going to recommend it. And let me know what you guys think if you check it out. And I know maybe some of you have seen it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of it, because I'm pretty high on it, and I'm wondering if you guys are too. And the second movie we're going to talk about today is Azrael. Azrael came out in 2024 and was directed by E.L. Katz, who has done quite a few things also, but is probably most known for Cheap Thrills, or at least that's the movie that I think I knew him from the most. He also did ABCs of Death. He did one of the entries into that. It's also, though, written by Simon Barrett, who is the frequent filmmaking partner of Adam Wingard, and I tend to really like the movies that he's written quite a bit. So once again, I've got a pedigree that kind of excites me. And does that lead to a pretty good movie? Well, obviously it does, because I'm putting it on the syllabus, but we're going to get into that in just a second. Now, first, if you haven't seen it before, the movie takes place in a near future reality where it's post-rapture. The rapture has happened. And there's this clan, this group, this cult, if you will, led by a woman, and they're all taking like a vow of silence. They all refuse to talk. They live in silence based on an obscure Bible verse, and that's kind of their faith and their religion. They cannot talk. They do not talk. And one woman is trying to leave this group with her boyfriend, but they don't want to let her leave, so they're pursuing her, and the hijinks abound. Now, I'm going to stop there, of course, and not spoil the movie, but the movie has a really interesting hook right off the bat in terms of both story and style, right? Because it's setting up this whole idea of this post-rapture world and this silent group, this silent cult, and it's really giving you a couple of title cards to explain what's going on, and maybe one or two title cards as you go on, but that's it. Otherwise, the movie is completely dialogue-free. Aside from, like, there's one scene where somebody comes along and speaking a little Esperanto, which apparently is a universal language. I didn't know this till I had to look it up for the research for this, but he speaks this universal language, and it's not really clear, you don't understand it, but it's the only dialogue in the entire movie. Otherwise, the movie is dialogue free. So it's an interesting acting challenge, an interesting exercise in face acting, right? In physical acting, in communicating with your body and your expressions rather than your dialogue. And it works. It's really good, in no small part because the star of this movie is Samara Weaving, Scream Queen extraordinaire. I'm a big Samara Weaving fan, and she is excellent here. This is one of the reasons I really like her, because she's really good here. Again, she's got to do a lot of heavy lifting here without speaking any words, and it's not easy. She does it with aplomb. She does a great job here. She's conveying a lot of emotion and intrigue while maintaining the pace of this movie, because this is basically kind of more of like an action horror movie, right? There's a lot of chasing, a lot of action here, a lot of violence in here, but at the same time, there's this whole silent aspect to it, right? It's kind of got like a quiet place vibe in a way, but without so much fixation on the quietness of it. The quietness seems to be not the main point of the plot. It's really just kind of a background or dressing or a lore that kind of goes along with this. They didn't have to make this movie dialogue free, but by making it dialogue free drew me in. It really does make an interesting kind of compelling hook. Like I said, it's a really cool style. It really just kind of makes you pay attention harder. And I like that. Now, the movie is pretty gory at times, and the gore effects are quite good. Like I said, the action here is good. The pacing is really good. It's a lot of chase, a lot of high energy stuff. Now, narratively, there's some, I don't want to call them flaws, but there's some issues here in the sense that while you've got these title cards to explain things, without dialogue, you don't have exposition. So you don't have any real clue of, like, for example, why Samara's trying to leave this group. You don't really know. They seem kind of terrible, so you can just kind of go with that. And then there's other little things that you don't know why. Like, for example, anytime they catch Samara, they don't just kill her. They try to set up something kind of elaborate for her. And part of that might be because there are these creatures in the woods that they believe are demons. They're kind of like all burnt out. They're actually a really cool creature design. They look really neat. And they kind of like seem to live in some sort of weird understanding with these creatures, and they kind of keep their cult or their group protected from them, but they also seem like they kind of do sacrifices to them or something like that. So that might be a part of what it does. And there's also a part of this that these people are fanatics, right? Like they literally don't talk because of this Bible verse, and they keep themselves adhered to a certain code or a certain set of rules, and so devoted to it are that they literally won't speak. They won't even like scream out, and if they're in hurt or in pain or something like that. So like they communicate with whistles instead. So that fanaticism may also lend itself to some of the weird narrative things that maybe seem a little hard to explain. Like there's a scene where they have like set up Samara to be sacrificed, and they turn their backs on her. They're not watching, and again, it's like this fanaticism, like they're not really supposed to watch or something like that. They're not supposed to like observe that thing. And I would just chalk it up to the fanaticism, which I think works really well in this movie. Like I said, it is admittedly a little convenient because it allows her to do some escaping and stuff like that. But again, I feel like it works. It never bothers me too much in the movie for that. And again, partly because of Samara Weaving. It's just, look, bloody Samara Weaving kicking ass is always a good time. It's like, it's kind of what she's known for. She's doing a really good job of it here. Like, if you like the Ready or Not movies, you're going to like this one too. Like, anytime she's covered in gore and blood, it's a good time, right? So that's a big draw for me for this movie. But the thing that put it over the top, the thing that made it syllabus worthy, the thing that made me want to talk about this movie is the ending, which I obviously won't spoil here, but it is absolutely wild. It goes pretty crazy, and it really wins me over. Like, this movie is good, but it goes really good at this point to me because I really like the ending and what the implications of the ending are, and just how kind of bug nuts it is and just kind of bizarre. I really dig that. It was not really what I was expecting to have happen. And when it happened, I was like, okay, you got me. I did not see that one coming. And I think that it maybe left a good taste in a lot of people's mouths, not just mine, because the reviews on this were very strong. Like when this movie came out a couple of years ago, it seemed like a lot of buzz was happening for it. People were talking about it quite a bit. Now, unfortunately, it seems like that's kind of died down. People don't seem like they talk about it too much, but the criticism on this is really, really good. The people who have seen it seem to really, really like it, and I'm one of those people. I think this one's definitely worth your time, definitely worth checking out. If it somehow flew under your radar, give it a chance because it's really, really interesting, really good, really well made. Like I said, well paced. It looks good. It's well shot, and Samara Weaving's giving a great performance. That's all you really need to have a good time. This one's a really good time. Check it out. And our last selection for the day is Soft and Quiet. Soft and Quiet came out in 2022 and was directed by Brazilian director Beth de Araujo, and her feature film debut, which is pretty noteworthy because she really knocks it out of the park with this one. And I'll tell you the truth, this is the movie, more than any other movie on the list, that made me create the Fanatics subgenre. I really want to talk about this movie. When I first heard about it, it blew me away. It still blows me away. And it seems like hardly anybody talks about it. So I really want to shine a light on it and bring it to you guys. So if you haven't seen it before, the challenge I'm going to have here is telling you about this movie without spoiling it, talking about it without spoiling it, which I'm hell-bent on not spoiling. So what I'll tell you is that this movie is about a young teacher, a woman who is trying to get pregnant, and she's got a group of friends that she's started kind of a club, and they are hanging out, and they come across some other people, and some stuff goes a little sideways. Things get a little out of control. They wind up in a really bad situation, and hijinks abound. and I'm going to just stop there. And it's going to be really difficult to talk about this movie without spoiling it, but I'm going to try. And the reason why I'm hell bent on not spoiling it is because the way I found out this movie was I was watching a YouTube video about a movie that gives you a twist in the first 15 minutes, which is what this movie does. It was this movie. And I was intrigued, so I had to go check it out. And it does. It tips its hand fairly early and just kind of changes everything about this movie. And I don't want to spoil that experience for you because it's a wonderful experience. I'm just going to tell you guys to check it out and see it. But we're going to talk about it a little bit so you can decide if you think you can handle it, because the movie is incredibly intense for a number of reasons. Now, one reason is because it's shot to be like a total one-take movie. The movie's shot in real time, and it's one continuous shot. Now, obviously not really one continuous shot. The movie was really filmed over 4 days, but they did these really long takes, and they did the 4 days just to kind of get the timing right in terms of lighting for outside, right? Because they wanted to have certain things happen at certain times of day. Like once the sun goes down is where certain things are supposed to happen in the movie. So the making of this is pretty interesting, but it's all cut together to make it look like one continuous shot. And it's done really, really well. And the performances work in this really, really well. More on those in a second. But the movie is doing this one take kind of real time thing, and it just ratchets up the tension. Things get worse and worse and worse and worse as the movie goes on, and it's all in real time. There's no breaks. There's no breaks to catch your breath. It just keeps getting worse. And how it's getting worse is just, it's hard to talk about this, but let's just say there are villains in the movie, and they are going to get under your skin. And that's intentional. This movie gets under your skin. It is a very uncomfortable watch because of how realistic it is. The villains in this movie feel incredibly real. And I would say in the 4 years since this movie came out, they've only gotten more realistic and more recognizable. It is really uncomfortable and upsetting and distressing and disturbing and infuriating to watch these villains do what they do in this movie. And it's enhanced by the fact that the acting in here is really strong, and it makes it feel really real as well. So you've got a group of actors, all of them I don't recognize. The only one I recognize is Olivia Lucardi, who I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but she's one of the friends in It Follows. She's one of Michael Monroe's friends in that movie, and she was the only one I recognize. And the fact that I don't recognize these people adds to that verisimilitude. Adds to that realism. This movie, it hinges on the very realistic aspect of this movie. The realistic plot, the realistic themes, the realistic fanaticism. And you're going to have to take my words for it. These are fanatics in this movie. I can't tell you why, I can't tell you how, but there's fanatics in this movie. And they are a problem in this movie. And I was blown away by how this movie made me feel and just sat with me after the fact. Like I couldn't let it go afterwards. It's just like it really got under my skin. And I think and it's definitely meant to, it's designed to, and it's so bleak. I have to warn you, it's an incredibly bleak movie. Now look, there's not a whole lot of stuff happening on screen that's particularly in your face, disturbing in terms of like gore or violence. There is some violence in here. There is some stuff that, like, if you're super sensitive to violence, maybe do a doesthedogdie.com and find out what you're seeing, because there's a couple things that are pretty upsetting, but they're not super explicit. They're happening on screen, but they're not really gratuitous or dwelled upon, but they're there. But that's not even the thing that's a problem in this movie. The problem in this movie is the fanaticism. It is the subject matter of the movie, which again, I know it's so weird that I'm just not telling you what this is about, but believe me, like, at least just watch the first 15 minutes. You'll know if you're in or not on the movie at that point. But it's not an easy watch. I have to let you know. I want to recommend this to everybody because I love this movie, but it is not exactly the most rewatchable. And I think that's why the movie is not really beloved. It got really strong reviews, but I see like nobody talking about this movie. I don't see like reaction videos. I see very few videos reviewing it on YouTube. And I think it's because it's too hard of a watch. I think it makes people uncomfortable. People don't want to feel the things that this movie is going to make them feel. Look, even I don't go back and revisit it. I've seen it exactly twice now. I saw it the first time I saw it, and I watched it again for this video. And here's the thing, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a really well-made movie. And the way it has an effect, an emotional, visceral effect on me, yeah, I love that. But I don't want to go back and do it. I don't sit through that a lot of times. And I have a feeling a lot of you would feel the same way, or maybe even tap out on it a little bit. It's a tough watch. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's worth it. So that's my caveat on it. I definitely think you guys should check it out if you haven't seen it. And again, based on the kind of the reputation of it or lack thereof, I feel like a lot of you might not have seen it. But if you have seen it, let me know what you think in the comments. But if you haven't seen it, don't look anything up. Don't look up anything about what it's about, because it's an immediate spoiler right off the bat. So go in as blind as you can, and then either thank me or blame me later. So those are our selections for the subgenre of horror movies about fanatics, fanatic horror movies. And I love those kind of movies. So of course I've got some extra credit selection for you. Like I said, I really enjoy these kind of movies. I had a lot of movies I want to talk about. So we're going to squeeze in a few extra here as extra credit. And the first one I want to bring up is The Seventh Sign. The Seventh Sign came out in 1988 and was directed by Carl Schultz. And I looked at his IMDb. There was nothing else that he directed that I was particularly familiar with or anything like that. And the reason why I remember this movie is because I remember seeing it when I was a teenager and had some affection for that. We'll probably get into that in a little bit too. But it has, it has a little bit of a nostalgia feel for me on this one. But if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a pregnant woman and her husband, and they have a room to rent in their house, and they are renting it out to this man who seems to be somewhat of a very strange religious fanatic. And that's noteworthy because there are all these events that are happening around town that seem, or around the world, I should say, that seem to be kind of religious signs or disasters, things like that. And there's all kinds of religious overtones, and it might be the end of the world. But I'm going to go ahead and stop there and not spoil it for you. And the movie resonates in a lot of ways for me, but I'll have to explain this a little bit. I grew up going to Christian school, so I have a pretty solid background in like biblical knowledge and stuff like that, Christianity. And this movie rewards you if you know your Bible. You don't have to, but it very much is rewarding you. The more scholarly you are in biblical studies, the more you're going to get out of this movie, is what I would say. And I knew quite a bit about that. So this movie kind of appealed to me for that sense. Like, I saw this movie as a teenager. I remember my sister and I rented it, and I had my girlfriend at the time there and stuff like that. We were expecting like a slashery type horror movie. This movie is way more cerebral than that. Way more cerebral. Now, it does have some really cool visuals, like these dream sequences like that are really bizarre and strange and visually striking. I'll admit, I wish they had some more of that in the movie, but it is pretty cool. But in terms of like visceral scares, it's light on that. It really is more of a thinker piece. But as I've gotten older, I've appreciated that much, much more. Another thing I appreciate is the cast. Demi Moore is your star here. She plays the pregnant woman. She's wonderful here. I'm a Demi Moore fan. I really like her, and she's very good in this movie. Her husband is played by Michael Biehn. He's always good, right? I feel like he gets a little short shrift in the movie, but he's always good. And then Jurgen Prochnow is the mysterious room renter, and he's also wonderful in this. He's very young in this movie, and it's interesting. I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but his role is very, very interesting. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him and surrounding the events that are going on around the world. And like I said, there are heavy biblical references throughout the movie. Theologists are going to eat in this movie. They're going to be well served in this movie. And I don't call myself a theologist, but I definitely think that the movie is playing into things that I really understand. Now, I will confess, the movie is a little convoluted. There's a lot going on. So you've got Demi Moore, and she's expecting a child, but she's also got a history of miscarriages, so there's some concerns about that. Meanwhile, her husband Michael Biehn is a lawyer, and he's trying to get this mentally challenged death row inmate off of death row or get exonerated before he gets executed. You've got the mysterious fanatical religious person. What's he about? With that mystery going around, and then you've got all this mystery of all these weird religious phenomenon going on around the world. It's a lot to bite off. It's a lot to keep track of. But I do feel that by the end of the movie, it all comes together and makes some pretty good sense, and it has a pretty good payoff. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending is maybe arguably kind of cheesy, but I love it. I love it. I think it's great, and I think that there will be people who really appreciate it, and there will be people who would definitely roll their eyes at it. I think it's great. Part of what I like about it, and again, not spoiling it, is that the whole movie has this idea about this religious fanatic that's live with them, but it really is about why and how a non-believer becomes a fanatic, and the meaning of that and the importance of that. And again, it's very religious in terms of themes, in terms of plot, but that aspect of it is something that I really liked, and it's why I wanted to put it on the here's an extra credit, is because of the take on fanaticism, kind of from the inside out perspective of somebody who's not a fanatic, dealing with a fanatic, and then understanding what it takes and how you get to that position. It's really interesting to me. Now, I'm going to admit I might be on an island on this one. The critical acclaim for this one isn't great, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it these days. Like I said, it had some buzz back in the day when it came out, but it doesn't seem to have endured very well. So I might be kind of alone on my thoughts about this one. And look, it might be that the ending is a bit on the downside, that it doesn't have the love that it could or should have, in my opinion. It's a bleak movie ultimately, but it's also got a really uplifting message. I don't know. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I really love the ending of this movie. I really think it's great. So I'm going to go ahead and say check it out. But again, it may not be for everybody. And the less you know about Christianity and the Bible, the less entertaining it might be for you. It might be a little bit more obtuse than you would like it to be. But that's kind of my caveat, I guess. But yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think of this one. And there's probably a lot of you that have actually seen this. And if you have thoughts on it, let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know what you guys think. And the next extra credit movie I want to talk about is The Reaping. The Reaping came out in 2007. It was directed by Stephen Hopkins, who has done quite a few movies, none of which are super amazing, but some noteworthy ones like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, Predator 2, some movies that I enjoy, So he's definitely working director who can do a pretty decent job here. And I think he's done a really good job here, but that might be not the most popular opinion. We're going to get into all of that in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a college professor who specializes in debunking supposed miracles. And she and her partner get brought to this small town that is full of religious fanatics to investigate these claims of biblical plagues that are affecting the town and causing an impact. And there's a dark history that is going to be uncovered here that might lead itself to changing some beliefs potentially. I'm going to go ahead and stop there and not spoil the movie for you. But the movie starts out with a pretty cool concept. The idea of miracle debunkers is really neat. I love that concept. The idea of somebody who goes and investigates to see whether or not you've got a real miracle on hand or if it can be explained away by science. And Hilary Swank is the main character, and she plays that role with real gusto. She really delivers this idea of somebody who is the hardcore skeptic. The cast is actually great in this movie. In addition to Hilary Swank, you've got Idris Elba, you've got Stephen Ray, got Anna Sophia Robb, David Morrissey, and everybody here doing really, really good work. Arguably better work than this movie deserves. This movie is like a legitimate studio film. It's like a $40 million budget, and it looks good. It's shot well. I think it sets a mood really well. It's got CGI effects, and I think they're pretty decent. They hold up fairly well, and they've got all this cool imagery and stuff like that. Really good cast, and a cool hook for a story, a cool mystery, and yet it still kind of feels a little B-movie-ish despite all of this. And it shouldn't, because again, everything's going well. It's well directed, it's well paced. The movie is getting good performances out of its cast. And again, it's exploring this interesting mystery that is a theologically based mystery. And as a result, it's leading into like all these different theological discussions about the meaning of faith and what a miracle is. And it's got all of these dramatic ideas of people dealing with their past and stuff like that, and romance and things like that. All of it works for me. All of these dramatic beats work for me in the movie. And so even when the movie kind of gets quote unquote slow because not as a lot of action stuff is happening, I'm really drawn in because I think the characters are pretty well rounded and pretty interesting, especially Hilary Swank. And I'm not a big Hilary Swank fan, but I do like her a lot in this movie. And I think that the character is really interesting. Again, partly because of the job that she does. This idea of miracle debunking is a lot of fun to me. And I do think that the mystery pays off pretty well. Like, the fanatic town is really interesting. The fanaticism in this movie might be a little on the light side, might be a little on the subtle side, but where it ultimately goes is pretty dark. I don't want to spoil things too much, but the intentions of this town, and it's fairly early on, they blame one particular family, and specifically one particular little girl, for everything that's going on there, and they don't mean her well. And it's super dark how they are all kind of fixated on this, and Hilary Swank trying to kind of debunk it. It's pretty interesting and pretty tense, and I like that. I like that they kind of go there. Like I said, I feel like this movie pays off pretty well. Now, I might be in the minority again. The critical reception of this, not good. Fan reaction to this, not good. I really like it. So, like I was saying, Seventh Sign, I might be on an island. This one, I'm almost certainly on an island here. Not everybody likes this movie, but I like where it goes. I like what it does. And I like the idea that, I don't want to spoil this too much, but the idea that looking at fanaticism in a more sympathetic light. Let's put it that way. I think that by the end of this movie, the fanatics in this movie maybe can be a little bit more sympathetic. I don't know. It's a debatable thing. And that's one of the things I like about this movie. It made me think a little bit. It makes me, kind of ponder faith and the meaning of what you interpret as a miracle. I like this movie. I think there's a lot to like about this movie. Again, from the cast to the direction to the vibe of the movie. It's just a very cool, mysterious, and kind of a creepy mood. I'm into all of it. But again, I'm in the minority. Not everybody loves this movie. I get it. That's fine. But if you haven't checked it out, I would say give it a chance. I would say give it your time. It's not a particularly long movie. It's under 2 hours long. And I think it's worth your time. I think it's worth checking out. But if you do that, let me know what you think. And if you hate this movie, if it's just not for you, I can't imagine anybody hates it. I just think people just don't really feel it. Let me know in the comments if that's the way you feel. I don't mind having a different opinion. I'll happily chat with you about it in the comments. But this is one that I think is underrated. And the last extra credit movie I want to talk to you guys about today is Brian Loves You. Now, Brian Loves You came out in 2008 and was directed by Seth Landau, who apparently was a news reporter prior to becoming a film director. He also stars in this movie. He's the main character in this movie. It is a very low budget movie. It's obviously kind of a labor of love, his own little baby project, if you will. And sometimes you bring up a movie on the horror movie syllabus because it's noteworthy for not being very good. And that's what we're talking about today. Now, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a guy, played by Seth Landau, who is investigating this strange cult of mask-wearing people that seem to have completely taken over this small Arizona town. And they have their own little versions of everything, and they control everything. And when they become aware of what he's doing, he becomes at risk, and they are hell-bent on not letting him escape. So he's got to try to find a way to get out of town. And hijinks abound, of course. And I'll stop there so as to not spoil the movie. But the movie is basically the hook of religious fanaticism gone awry. It's really trying to go into this idea of fanatics getting into power and taking over. And it's an interesting idea. The cult of Brian and the mystery of who Brian is and what he's about and what it all means is intriguing. It draws you in. It's a really good idea, but it doesn't really ever come together, if I'm being honest. It doesn't really ever congeal into something that's satisfying. Now, what you've got here is an amateur filmmaker, and you can tell, making a found footage movie that's very low budget. And honestly, it kind of feels somewhat a little bit more like mockumentary style because there are some like interviews in the movie, but then there's some found footage type stuff. But then the found footage is very hard to believe. Like, I get on about found footage and the reality of it. Like, there's too many different camera angles for this found footage to be believably found footage. Just too many different angles. And I mean, at least they're not playing any music while they're going through this, but it is like unbelievable that there's somebody filming all of this stuff. It breaks that veneer of true found footage pretty badly. And then you've got these monologues by different people being interviewed that feel very rehearsed. They feel very coached, like they're reading lines or memorizing lines. They don't feel natural at all. A lot of the performances don't feel natural here, and it's weird because this movie strangely has a really solid cast. Outside of Seth Landau, you've got Brink Stevens, you've got Tiffany Shepis, you've got George Wendt, Daniel Roebuck, and Tony Todd showing up, I guess, to collect a paycheck. But I don't understand because this movie looks extremely low budget. I don't know how they paid these people to show up, but they're clearly here to get paid, and none of them are doing a particularly good job. Now, Tony Todd is fine. He kind of narrates the movie and at the beginning, and he never phones it in, right? He's going to give you what he gives you, and it's always going to be good. But everybody else is, you're not really sure why most of them are here. And look, I love Tiffany Shepis, but she's not really bringing a lot here because the script is bad. And that's the thing. The dialogue is bad. The script is bad. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So these actors are trying. You can see it. You can see them trying to elevate the material, trying to make some tension out of this, trying to bring some energy to it. But it's so limp and it's so flat. And it's really a disappointing thing because this movie has the potential to be fun, to be kind of a so bad it's good, over the top, crazy thing. And every now and then it gets there. And again, I'll credit some of these actors for doing that. Shepis in particular does a good job of like kind of getting a little over the top, playing it a little bit big, and really kind of feeding into that potentially so bad it's good idea. It's really cool for moments, but there's a lot of time in between that it is slow. It is meandering. There's like these slow long shots. Like there's like a kitchen scene where it's just like the static shot of the kitchen for a really long time, and then you get like these really weird, strange things that are being filmed. The movie doesn't have a lot of direction in it. It's aimless. It kind of meanders. It doesn't really know what it wants to do, and it doesn't have enough cool set pieces to build around to make those draggy scenes feel worth it. It's got some cool stuff. It's got these mask wearing people who wear these creepy masks, and they go to church or they go to school wearing the mask, and it's creepy. It's creepy seeing them in these bright daylight things doing these kind of culty weird things. And it works, but it's not enough. It's not enough to make up for, again, kind of poor acting because the dialogue is so bad, and like, nobody's really seeming like they're having enough fun with it, and the lead just being a little too he doesn't carry this. The movie's heavily on his shoulders, and he doesn't carry it, and it's bad because it could have been something really fun. There's a scene where a guy starts doing kung fu and stuff, kung fu moves, and it's like, oh, is this gonna break out and just be kind of like gloriously hilarious, like Troll 2 style? No, it's not. It's never going to reach those levels. It's going to be too boring, honestly, for most of that. But here's the thing. It kind of has a reputation as being really bad or being a disappointment. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. It's like, before I saw this movie, for a long time, I kept hearing about this movie, and I didn't know that it was a bad movie. People just talk about it, not necessarily talk about like praising it, they would just talk about it like it was something you had to see. And now I kind of get why. You have to kind of see it to see just kind of how implausibly not good it is. But it's not so bad that it's good. It's not fun. It's just kind of bad. So I guess I'm not really recommending it to you because I think it's going to be a waste of time. I don't think you're going to enjoy watching it. I just think that it bears mentioning because it does seem to have this reputation. People talk about it as something like you would not believe seeing this movie and just seeing how flat it is. Now, when we talk about like DIY movies, backyard movies, shot on video, homemade movies, I'm usually pretty forgiving and pretty, understanding about this. And I have a lot of grace for them. This one, for some reason, doesn't scratch me the same way. It doesn't get that same grace from me. And I don't know if it's because it's got real actors in it. It obviously had some sort of budget, or if it just feels a little too self-indulgent for the filmmaker. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't give me that same warm, fuzzy feeling that so many of the other do-it-yourself movies that we've talked about on the channel have. It's just kind of disappointing. And again, I can't recommend watching it, but if you're curious, check it out, let me know what you think. If there's more to it or more value in it than I'm saying, let me know. But I think my opinion here is the majority opinion. I think people find this movie to be flat, dull, and uninteresting, and ultimately a waste of time. But I had to bring it up because, again, it has this bit of reputation, and at least I know of it in this reputation-wise. So I just had to bring it up and kind of, I guess, warn you about it. Maybe, I don't know, but consider yourself warned. So that's going to do it for our exploration into fanatic horror movies. Fanaticism, it's fun stuff, man. I really like these movies. Like I said, most of these are movies I kind of expect you haven't seen before. They kind of seem like they're not super mainstream, or at least talked about as much. Some of the older ones aren't talked about as much. And I would recommend checking them out, man. Some of them caveats like we talked about previously, but these are movies that I felt deserved a little bit more shine. So that's basically why I decided to make this entire subgenre, was to highlight these movies. And now it's time to highlight a Trivia Pursuit card. I'm going to ask and answer a question live on camera. And we're talking about Fanatics, so we're going to go to the psychological category on the card, of course. And here's our question. Which character in 1989's Pet Sematary is not resurrected? Gage Creed, Rachel Goldman Creed, Judd Crandall, or Bill Baterman? And this is hilarious to me because, A, I do poorly with names, as everybody knows who watches the channel regularly. I don't retain character names super well. B, I do not like Pet Sematary. I covered it on the channel. I'm not a fan of this movie. I don't really care for it very much. And even the remake, which was also bad. I'm told the book is much better. I haven't actually read the book. I probably should. But the movie, I know there's a whole generation of people who love that movie. I'm not one of them. I don't particularly care for it. But I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question. And when I answer it, I'll explain why I think I know the answer to this question. But I know there's a lot of you out there that love Pet Sematary. It's a very, very popular movie. A lot of people think it's one of Stephen King's best. I'm not one of those people, like I said, but I'm guessing that those of you are out there who've seen the movie, you know the answer to this question. I think if you know the characters, it's pretty easy. If you know the movie, I think it's pretty easy as well. I think, I think there's some people that are, you can obviously add this list of four, you can cross a couple off the list. So, you can narrow down your choices a little bit, kind of do a 50-50 kind of thing, if you will. But I'm going to go ahead and stop prattling on. I think that I don't need to give you guys too much time. Either you know this or you don't, right? And if you don't guess, it's a 1 in 4 shot, right? So lock in your answer. Okay. My answer is Judd Crandall. Judd Crandall. Again, I don't remember his name, but I remember the name Judd because that's Fred Gwynn's character. Fred Gwynn plays Judd, and I am pretty sure he lives in the movie. But we'll check the card. Judd Crandall. Judd Crandall. Yep. Like I knew, the kid doesn't live. The mom doesn't live. I don't remember who Bill Biderman. I'm guessing it's the other ghostly zombie guy that you see around. But Judd Crandall. Again, I can't even remember the name just after looking at it. Is the one. And yeah, I got that one right. I'm guessing a lot of you guys did too. But let me know in the comments if you did or you didn't. Also, let me know if there's other cool Fanatics movies that you think I should check out. I've covered a lot of them on the channel. Things like Midsommar, Rosemary's Baby. I've covered so many of them on the channel in different subgenres. So I may have already seen what you recommend, but recommend it anyways because I'm always enjoying this kind of movies and I'm loving to find out about more that I've never heard about before or I've never watched before. Maybe I'll watch make a video about that one in the future. But until then, let's just say class dismissed.